At his company party, my husband dismissed me as a youthful mistake. A day later, I revealed to him precisely the kind of mistake I truly was. Welcome to the Life's Turns channel. Before we start, please tell us where you're tuning in from. We're always intrigued. We trust you'll enjoy this compelling tale. Zahara was poised before the floor-length mirror in the master suite, carefully securing her earrings, tiny pearl drops a keepsake from her mother. Her fingers quivered, subtly a tremor she tried to conceal even from herself. This evening marked the corporate gala for the influential ad agency where Achilles was employed. It was his agency, his triumph, his night. She, as always, was merely an ornament for the scene. Draped inside the closet was a slim, dark sapphire gown, tasteful and subdued the one Achilles had previously endorsed with a clipped, "It's adequate, not too loud." Zahara traced a hand across the material, sensing the chilled silk under her fingertips. The gown was lovely, costly, but completely unmemorable, much like she believed she had become lately. "Zahara, are you nearly ready? We need to depart in 30 minutes. Achilles' voice echoed from the washroom. "I refuse to be late. Tonight is massive. You get it." "Yes, nearly finished," she replied, slipping the dress on and fastening the side zipper. A massive night. For him. Achilles' firm Velocity Media had just secured a major deal with a Fortune 500 tech giant. 6 months of grueling talks, presentations, and pressure. Now was the moment of victory. Zahara knew her spouse would be the focus of it all, receiving accolades, impressing everyone, and recounting his accomplishments. She would linger nearby, smiling and nodding, anticipating someone's polite inquiry. "So what is it you do?" And what could she reply? "I manage our home. I'm with Achilles." 20 years ago, she had her own ambitions. Zahara graduated at the top of her class at Howard University, holding a degree in interior design. She envisioned launching her own studio, crafting environments where people felt at ease to live. But then she met Achilles, a driven, dynamic marketing student, and was instantly smitten. In those days, he vowed they would construct a life together, that he had faith in her gifts, and that he would champion her every endeavor. For the first several years, he did. They leased a small one-bedroom flat in a rather modest neighborhood in Southeast DC. Both of them worked. Achilles began his professional life at a small, specialized agency. Zahara was employed as a designer's aide. At night, they would sit in the kitchen sipping inexpensive $2 Chuck wine, envisioning their future. Achilles would embrace her and murmur, "We can do it all, Z. You'll see. In 10 years, you'll own your studio and I'll launch my own firm." But existence had other plans. Achilles' career took off rapidly. He was a gifted dealmaker, adept at acquiring clients, convincing them, and pitching concepts. Within 5 years, he was leading a division. And 3 years later, he launched Velocity Media. The wealth flowed in. They relocated to a vast condominium in Buckhead, Atlanta, purchased a luxury SUV, and began vacationing in destinations like the Bahamas and Dubai. And amidst the whirlwind, Zahara's aspirations just evaporated. Initially, Achilles requested her help with the firm's administrative tasks. "Z, you are home. You have more time." Next, it became arranging meetings. From finding office spaces to designing the interiors. Zahara gave her labor freely to her husband for a future they would build together, or so she convinced herself. Then one evening, Achilles proposed, "Darling, why not just quit your job entirely? Why are you racing across Atlanta with a tape measure handling other people's tiny apartments? We're doing fine. Our income is more than enough. Just focus on our home and on you." The wife of a thriving businessman should look the part, not some overworked woman pulling a double shift. Back then, his suggestion almost sounded like he was being caring, a form of care. So Zahara agreed, left her job, and gradually, unknowingly, she morphed into the perfect polished accessory for Achilles' life. She ran the household, cooked his meals, visited the gym, the spa, and the salon, always meeting him with a perfect smile after his day. She never argued, never disagreed. She was easy. Achilles strode into their bedroom, fastening the cuffs on his immaculate white shirt. He was a vision. His bespoke suit clung perfectly to his athletic frame. His haircut was sharp and styled, and the subtle fragrance of his costly cologne lingered in the air. At the age of 45, he had the assured, satisfied air of a man who had made it. "You're going with that dress," he commented, with a quick glance at his wife. "It's acceptable, I guess. Keep the makeup simple and please try not to seem bored, all right. We have important guests attending. I can't have them believing my wife is bored to death at my event." Zahara forced down the knot in her throat and just nodded. Comments like that once stung. Now they were just an annoyance, like background static. The gala was being held at one of Midtown Atlanta's most prestigious restaurants. It featured panoramic views of the city at night, gentle ambient lights, and staff in pristine white gloves with impeccably set tables. About 30 guests, a mix of agency employees, their significant others, and key clients were mingling. Everyone elegantly dressed, lively, holding champagne flutes. Achilles instantly immersed himself in the crowd, shaking hands, embracing coworkers, sharing laughs, and soaking in the accolades. Zahara remained nearby, offering a smile on cue and answering perfunctory questions. A major client's wife, a poised woman in her late 50s, asked, "And what do you do, Zahara? Are you also in the media business?" "No, I manage our home," Zahara replied, the words feeling rehearsed. "Oh, how wonderful. So, you have time for your house and a garden, perhaps. I haven't held a job in about 10 years, and truly it is such a relief not to be bound by a schedule. You're free to do as you please." Zahara simply nodded, though the words made her flinch. Do as you please. She couldn't recall the last time her actions were driven by her own desires, not by what Achilles required or what was best for their home. At the head of the main table sat Achilles, with Zahara placed dutifully beside him. He was completely in his element, telling jokes, captivating the guests, and recounting industry tales and stories of challenging clients. The entire table laughed, captivated by everything he said. Zahara just sat in silence, taking small sips of her champagne and smiling when it seemed appropriate. The director from the parent corporation, a big man with silver hair and a powerful voice, stood up, raising his glass. "My friends, tonight we celebrate more than a successful contract. We honor a true breakthrough for our agency. And we owe it all to the skill, tenacity, and the undeniable charisma of our very own Achilles. Let us all raise a glass in his honor." The room burst into applause as all eyes turned to Achilles. He rose, affecting a look of modesty, yet his eyes shone with pure satisfaction. "My sincere thanks. Thank you, my friends," he started. A knot formed in Zahara's stomach. She recognized that tone. He was preparing to dazzle, to speak beautifully, and to captivate the entire room. "Success, as you know, is a collaborative achievement," he went on. "Without all of you, I'd have nothing. You truly are the finest team one could ever hope for." Applause erupted, followed by cheers of agreement. Achilles paused, surveyed the crowd, his focus onto Zahara. A flicker of mockery danced in his eyes. Immediately, Zahara sensed a problem. A sudden chill crept down her back. And furthermore, Achilles continued, his smirk growing wider. "I wish to toast my lovely wife, my own, Zay." He raised his glass higher, all heads turning toward her. "To my youthful indiscretion." The entire ballroom erupted into peals of laughter, loud, heartfelt, and merry. One person cheered while others applauded. Achilles glowed, his smile smug, obviously proud of his own cleverness. He glanced at Zahara, waiting for her to laugh along, to participate in the joke, just like she always did. She consistently supported his humor, even if she was the target. This time, however, something within Zahara didn't simply crack. It disintegrated like fragile ice, giving way beneath her. She remained seated, a fixed smile on her face, as an icy chill coursed through her entire being. A youthful indiscretion. That's how he'd labeled her. Before his coworkers, his associates, and total strangers. 20 years of being married, 20 years of sacrificing her ambitions for his profession, 20 years of overlooking his wandering eye. Oh yes, she was aware of that secretary from 3 years back, and the client from that business trip. 20 years of feigning ignorance. To his diminishing respect to how he saw her increasingly as just another exquisite piece of furniture in their home. And, now this, a youthful indiscretion. Zahara lifted her glass, smiling. But no one saw that the smile failed to touch her eyes. She drank the champagne in a single gulp. The bubbles burned her throat, and the sharp physical sensation seemed to jolt her into sobriety. Entirely. The meal went on. Achilles, smugly satisfied, kept joking and basking in the praise. On a few occasions he even patted Zahara on the shoulder, a gesture that said, "Don't be upset, it's only a joke." She simply nodded and smiled. Within her, a peculiar sense of detachment was taking root. It felt as though she were observing the scene from a great distance. A junior agency employee, a bright-eyed woman in her late 20s seated beside her, leaned close and whispered, "Try not to let him get to you. Men are often like that. They speak without thinking. My own partner says things on occasion and then acts surprised when I am actually upset." Zahara gazed at the young woman. So youthful, so full of ambition, likely focused on her career. Her entire life was still ahead of her. In a flash, Zahara saw her own reflection from 20 years prior, equally naive, equally smitten, prepared to do anything for the man she loved. An overwhelming pity for that past version of herself washed over her. "Thank you," she replied quietly. "I'm fine, but nothing was all right." A fundamental part of her had been permanently altered. The night seemed to stretch on forever. Zahara ate on autopilot, drank, and responded to questions. Eventually, Achilles was completely absorbed in a discussion with a partner regarding a new venture, so Zahara quietly escaped to the restaurant's balcony for a breath of fresh air. The city sparkled below. A crisp wind gently tossed her hair. She clutched the railing, her mind racing with one question: when did it all change? At what exact moment did I cease to exist? An individual to Achilles, becoming a mere fixture in his successful life. When did he start allowing himself those barbs, those condescending comments? And more critically, when had she permitted him to treat her like that? Zahara recalled her desire to enroll in design classes a year prior to revive her career. Achilles had merely laughed. "Why would you ever do that? You have not worked in 20 years. Who would possibly hire you? You should be focusing on fitness. You have put on a bit of weight recently." She had remained silent at the time, never signing up. Instead, she went to the gym. She recalled suggesting a weekend getaway to the Appalachians together 6 months prior. Just the two of them, just like the old days. Achilles had dismissed her idea. "No time for romance. My project is critical. Besides, what would we even do up there? You are not the same girl who could sleep in a tent." Every time she had swallowed his insult, convinced herself it was insignificant, that family and stability were paramount, that every couple endured this. But this evening, a youthful mistake that was the last straw. She re-entered the room. Achilles had not even noticed she was gone. Zahara resumed her seat, drained her champagne, and was suddenly overcome by an odd serenity. The decision was finally made, final and absolute. She would not cause a scene or scream or cry or even demand an apology. It was entirely pointless. Achilles was never going to change. He truly did not comprehend he had done anything hurtful. In his mind, she truly was a mistake, one he had simply grown weary of, but a divorce was too much bother and far too inconvenient. Well, she would show him exactly what kind of mistake she was. The gala concluded after midnight. Achilles, thoroughly drunk and pleased, chattered the entire way home. "Did you see how that went? It was fantastic. I feel this new contract will open every door for us in Europe. Perhaps we will even open an office there. Can you imagine it? Z. Are you even listening? Yes, I am listening, she responded softly, gazing out the window at the city's fleeting lights. And stop sulking about the toast. It was only a joke. Everybody laughed. You have lost your sense of humor entirely. Zahara stayed silent. Her sense of humor, Achilles. She had not lost it. You just have not been funny for a very long time. Back at home, he staggered into the bedroom and collapsed on the king-sized bed, still fully clothed, snoring within a minute. Zahara stood watching from the doorway, staring at him, this stranger she had shared 20 years with, and she felt nothing. No love, no hate, not even pain, just a void. She turned away and walked to the kitchen. She put the kettle on to boil and took out her favorite mug with the blue forget-me-nots, the one from her mother, and sat at the table. The condo was still only the tick of the wall clock, and the kettle's hum broke the silence, and that is when Zahara started to plan. Zahara sat in her kitchen, cradling the warm mug of chamomile tea. The wall clock showed 1:30 a.m. Achilles' steady snores echoed from their bedroom. He was in a deep sleep, as he always was after drinking heavily. On nights like these, Zahara would go to sleep swallowing her bitterness, telling herself that the next day would be better. But not this time. Tonight. This night she felt a profound clarity in her mind, as if the fog that clouded her sight for so many years had finally lifted a youthful mistake. The words still echoed in her ears, but they no longer caused her any pain. They were the catalyst, the final push for what should have been done ages ago. Zahara sipped her tea, set the cup aside, and opened her laptop. Her fingers moved with purpose over the keyboard. She accessed their joint bank account, the main account where Achilles kept the funds for household costs, which showed a hefty six-figure balance. He relished controlling the money, providing her a debit card with a meager monthly cap, and scrutinizing her purchases each month. Where did that $2,000 go? Why must you spend so much? Such arguments were constant, and Zahara always had to defend herself like a schoolgirl answering to her headmaster. However, what Achilles was unaware of was that not every dollar in that account belonged to him. 3 years prior, Zahara's grandmother had died, leaving her a significant inheritance. Zahara then sold the small townhome in South Carolina, and the profits, nearly $100,000, were deposited into their shared account for the down payment for the Buckhead condominium they currently occupied. Achilles had declared, "Perfect, we will invest in our home. It is joint property anyway." Joint. Still, the condo was titled only in his name, Achilles Smay. Zahara scoffed. How blind had she truly been? For how many years had she allowed him to make her decisions, control her finances, her time, her very life? She opened a new browser tab and went to the website of a bank where just 1 month prior, almost on instinct, she had opened an account solely in her own name. At the time, it was merely a faint wish to possess something for herself, something independent. Now it had become a lifeline. Zahara confirmed the routing and account details, then switched back to the joint account and initiated the transfer of the funds. Not all at once. That would raise a bank alert. First, a transfer of $3,000. She confirmed it via a text message. Then another $2,000, followed by $4,000. One transfer after another, deliberate and serene. Her hands did not tremble. Her heart beat with a steady rhythm. In approximately 1 hour, she moved almost $90,000 to her private account. Achilles would find the drained account come morning and would naturally race to the bank, yelling and demanding the funds be returned. However, the transactions were entirely legal, executed from an account she had full access to into an account under her own name. No fraud. Zahara shut the laptop and drank the last of her cold tea. She rose and moved into the small room Achilles referred to as his study. His enormous mahogany desk dominated the space along with a leather armchair and shelves lined with marketing and business books. Shelves none of which he had ever read. They were purely for show. A safe had been installed in the wall. Did Zahara know the combination? Naturally? Achilles, for all his arrogance, was predictable. The code was their anniversary, June 15th, the exact date he had publicly called a youthful mistake that night. She entered the numbers. The safe clicked open. Inside were tidy stacks of money. Achilles always kept cash handy for emergencies, having no faith in banks whatsoever. Zahara performed a quick count. Roughly $5,000, all in $100 bills. She took every last one. Then she removed documents, contracts, securities. She scanned them rapidly. Stock options, bond certificates. She shoved everything into a large manila envelope. Resting at the bottom of the safe was a velvet box. Zahara opened it. Inside were gold cufflinks, a gift from Achilles' father, before he passed away. Achilles never put them on, but he treasured them like a sacred relic. Zahara hesitated a moment, then took them as well, so he could experience what it felt like to lose something irreplaceable. She shut the safe, spun the dial, and departed the room. Study. Then came the documents. Zahara approached the large living room cabinet, the repository of their shared paperwork. Files. Methodically, she sifted through them, their marriage certificate, her passport, and the documents for the condo. And there it was, the purchase agreement. While the condo was titled to Achilles' Smay, the contract included an important appendix. A statement confirmed an initial payment of $100,000 drawn from the account of Zahara Smay, her grandmother's inheritance. Zahara photographed every single page with her phone, then secured the originals in a folder of her own. In the coming divorce, this proof would be her ace in the hole. Next, 3 years of bank statements. Zahara located the folder and began leafing through it. There they were, the transfers. Regular payments of $500 were wired to an unknown account for 18 solid months. Zahara felt a smirk form. So the affair wasn't 3 years old as she'd suspected, but merely 18 months long, and he was financing his mistress with their shared funds. She photographed the statement's irrefutable proof of infidelity that would surely play a significant role in the asset division. Tucked in the cabinet's corner was another folder, this one old and worn. Zahara retrieved it and opened it to find photographs of their youth. There they were, first year of college, laughing, hugging beside a fountain, on the Morehouse campus. Then their wedding, small, just for close friends. Zahara in a simple white dress and Achilles in a suit with a thin tie, both utterly lost in love. Here was their first apartment, sitting on the floor surrounded by moving boxes, sipping champagne from plastic cups. When did it all change? Zahara stared at the photos, unable to pinpoint the exact breaking point. Perhaps there wasn't a single moment. Maybe it was a slow erosion. With every success, each promotion, and each expensive suit, he climbed higher and higher. She remained in place. Eventually, he started to look down upon her. Zahara shut the folder. She didn't need these pictures. The past had died tonight in that restaurant along with his pathetic toast. The clock read 3 in the morning. Achilles was still sound asleep. Zahara went back to the kitchen, turning on the laptop. Once more. She pulled up an airline website. Tickets. But to where? Far away. Somewhere nobody knew her. A place to start. A new Milan. For some reason, the name surfaced in her thoughts. Zahara had always dreamed of experiencing Italy, of seeing its architecture and its beauty. Achilles had promised to take her there, but there were always commitments, some important meeting or another project. The dream had simply stayed a dream. Zahara found a flight departing today at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was a direct flight, a single-ticket business class. The cost was $1,200 expensive, but she'd use his card, the one connected to their joint account. She clicked book and entered Achilles' credit card details. The payment was processed successfully. The ticket was confirmed. Her flight left in 5 hours. Now for accommodations. Zahara opened a rental website selecting Milan. She scanned through small studios, apartments, and rooms, then she settled on a charming downtown flat near the Duomo. The rent was $2,200 for 1 month. Pricey, but lovely. She booked it, paying once more with Achilles' card. Zahara leaned back in her chair, a sense of finality washing over her. She would fly, away to begin a new life. But first, she needed to pack. Entering the bedroom, she saw Achilles lying on his sidearms flung out. His mouth was parted slightly, his face etched with an expression of complete and utter self-satisfaction. Zahara paused at the doorway, her gaze fixed on him. For 20 years, half her existence, she had adored this man, sacrificing her entire youth. Her aspirations, her ambitions, only to be branded a mistake. No, Achilles, our union was not the error. The real mistake was my prolonged tolerance of your contempt. Silently, Zahara went to the closet and retrieved a small carry-on bag. Suitcase. She packed sparsely with Spartan efficiency, taking only necessities. A few outfits, undergarments, and her cosmetics case, essential documents, her passport, the condominium deeds, financial statements, and the photographic proof saved on her phone, plus the laptop, its chargers, and the pearl earrings from her mother, the very ones she wore this evening. A solitary picture of her mother was the only other item she set aside. Nothing more. Clothing was replaceable. Possessions held no value. Only freedom mattered. Zahara latched the suitcase shut, moved it into the hallway, then went back to the kitchen, glancing at the clock. 3:30 a.m. Just 3.5 hours before her flight. A cab would be called for 6. It would be a 40-minute journey to Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International Airport. Taking a seat at the table, she poured another cup of tea. Her hands remained steady, and her mind was perfectly clear. In an instant, a whole existence was disintegrating overnight. Yet remarkably, she did not feel anguish. Within her, only a profound lightness. Her mind replayed the last 3 years, with Achilles staying late at work more often, ceasing his inquiries about her day or feelings, and completely forgetting her birthday last year. Simply forgetting. He had returned home late. When she had gently reminded him, he dismissed it casually. My fault. I was buried in work. We'll celebrate this weekend. But they never did. 6 months prior, she'd been struck by a severe flu, her fever spiking to 103 degrees. Achilles was traveling for work and never even called to see how she was. Zahara lay isolated in the empty condo, taking pills and making her own broth. She healed in solitude. Upon his return 1 week later, his careless question was, "So you're all better now," before moving on to his own matters. He once brought her orange juice, tucked her snugly under a blanket, and sat close by reading to her. Back when they were just students. When Zahara contracted strep throat, Achilles had remained by her dorm bed for 3 days, preparing her tea with honey and bringing her medication. In those days, she was important. In those days, she was not an error. She was the core of his world. What became of that Achilles? Or was this his true self, concealed beneath the facade of a devoted smitten student? Shaking her head, Zahara dismissed the thought. It was irrelevant. The past was immutable. Only the future remained malleable. She rose and walked through the condo, past the living room's expensive furniture Achilles had chosen without asking her opinion. The modern abstract artwork lining the walls, which she detested, was his insistence, as was the kitchen with all the latest appliances she rarely used, since Achilles preferred ordering takeout. The bedroom and the vast bed where they had for so long slept like strangers for what felt like ages, each to their own side. This place wasn't her home, just an expensive box where she simply existed, but never truly lived. Zahara went into the bathroom, studying her reflection in the mirror. Her face was weary, yet serene. A firm resolve shone in her eyes. Opening her cosmetics bag, she retrieved a tube of vibrant, provocative red lipstick that she had purchased 1 year ago but never wore after Achilles had jeered, "Are you looking for business? Wear a decent color. Defiantly, Zahara applied the bright red lipstick. She met her own gaze in the mirror and smiled. They're much better. Turning to the wall mirror, she scrawled in bold letters, "Mistake corrected." A flawless message. It was concise and clear. Zahara went back to the kitchen, glanced at the clock. 5 a.m. It was time. She booked a ride. On her phone, keying in the airport as her destination. Her ride would be there in 15 minutes. During the wait, Zahara collected the final items, the keys to his SUV and the silver sedan he purchased last year, the one he babied like a child. Zahara pocketed the keys and the vehicle title. He could search for them later. The papers from the safe were organized and filed in her folder. Cash was secured in her purse along with the laptop phone and chargers. All essentials were with her. Zahara moved through the condo for the last time, pausing at the bedroom door. Achilles was still sound asleep, completely carefree. He couldn't know that in hours his whole world would be upended. Farewell, Achilles, Zahara thought. Thanks for the lesson. You showed me what no woman should ever have to endure. And I finally learned my worth. She turned, approached the hallway chest and slid off her wedding ring. Gold, with a single small diamond. It had once represented a promise of forever. Now it was nothing more than metal. Zahara set the ring down on the chest beside the apartment keys. Her phone buzzed. A notification. Her ride was waiting. Zahara slipped on her coat, grabbed her suitcase and handbag, and then opened the door. Darkness still clung to the city, but the eastern sky held a faint light. Dawn was close. A new day for a new life. Zahara stepped out of the condo, pulling the door quietly closed. She chose the stairs, avoiding the elevator's noise. The ride was waiting at the curb as promised. The driver, a man in his middle years, got out to help with her luggage. "To the airport?" he asked. "Yes," Zahara confirmed, settling into the back seat. The vehicle pulled away from the curb. Zahara glanced back at the building. The windows were all dark. Up on the fourth floor, her old life was sleeping while she drove toward her future. The city was still quiet, the streets empty, with scattered cars and street lamps. The car glided over the asphalt, and with each passing mile, Zahara felt a weight lift. Her driver remained silent, not pushing with questions, and for that she was truly grateful. At one point, he simply asked, "Going away for a while?" Zahara paused for a beat before replying, "Forever." "I understand." The driver just nodded and said nothing more. They reached the airport quickly, having beaten the morning traffic. Zahara paid the fare and retrieved her luggage before heading into the terminal. It was sparsely populated with travelers on the earliest flights. She made her way to the check-in desk and presented her passport and ticket. The agent offered a smile. "Business class to Milan. Boarding in 90 minutes. Are you checking any luggage?" "No, it's all carry-on." Zahara took her boarding pass, went through security, and found a seat by a large window in the departure lounge. Beyond the glass, the sky was slowly brightening. The sun would be up soon. Zahara looked at her phone. 6:30 in the morning. Achilles was surely still asleep. He'd likely wake around 10, then head to the kitchen for coffee. And finally notice she was gone. At first, he would assume she was just out shopping. Then he'd spot the mirror, then the open safe, then the zeroed-out bank account. A small smirk touched Zahara's lips. It would be fascinating to see his face in that moment. She opened her phone, navigated to contacts, found the entry for Achilles, paused for a moment, and then blocked his number. It was done. The line went dead. Her flight was called at 7:30. Zahara rose and walked to the gate, casting one last look at her hometown through the vast window. Atlanta was stirring to life. A normal day was dawning for millions of its people, but for her, this day signified the start of an entirely new existence. Zahara stepped onto the plane and found a comfortable window seat. A flight attendant brought her champagne, the customary welcome for passengers in business class. Zahara accepted the glass, taking a slow sip. The tiny bubbles tickled her tongue. She gazed out the window as the plane was gaining altitude. The city fell away below, growing ever smaller. Farewell, my old life, Zahara silently thought. And hello, new one. I don't know what you will be like, but you can't possibly be worse than the last. The aircraft soared high into the sky, and Zahara leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt truly free. Achilles opened his eyes, then instantly squeezed them shut again. His head was pounding. His mouth was utterly parched. He groaned, rolling onto his back and sliding a hand over his face. A hangover. A truly brutal hangover. How much had he managed to drink? Last night, champagne and then whiskey. He had a vague memory of someone pouring him cognac, too. He cracked open one eye and looked at the clock on the nightstand. 11:45 a.m. Crap. He'd overslept. But what did it really matter? It was Saturday. He could afford to sleep off the party. Yesterday's party was epic. He had been the center of attention. Everyone was congratulating him, fawning over his success. That toast for the big contract, the applause. Achilles smiled at the memory. Yeah, I know how to make an impression. He struggled to push himself up in the bed, massaging his temples. His head was still pounding. He needed to get up, drink some water, and locate a painkiller. He glanced to the other side of the bed, which was empty. Zahara must be already up. She was probably in the kitchen making breakfast, although she usually came in to check on him by this time, offering something for the hangover. She hadn't today for some reason. Achilles got up, stumbling toward the bathroom. He splashed cold water on his face. It helped marginally. He stared at himself in the mirror, face puffy, eyes bloodshot and stubbled. He looked a mess. He had to clean up. He looked again at the mirror and froze. Written on the glass in bright red lipstick were the words, "Mistake corrected." Achilles just stared at the writing, wondering what kind of ridiculous thing this was. Was Zahara playing some sort of joke? He ran a finger over the letters. The lipstick was fresh, not entirely dry. Strange. Zahara never wrote on mirrors, and she hadn't been in the mood for jokes lately. Z, he shouted, walking out of the bathroom. Where are you? What is this juvenile stunt on the mirror? Silence. There was no reply. Zahara, Achilles, repeated louder while walking down the hall. Silence. The condo was utterly quiet. No sound of footsteps, no running. Water, no television. Just a strange, suffocating feeling of emptiness. Achilles walked into the kitchen. It was empty. No, breakfast was made. The coffee maker was cold. Zahara's mug with the forget-me-nots stood on the counter. Clean and empty. Nothing else. Zay, quit it. Achilles felt a surge of irritation building inside him. Where are you? He then walked into the living room. Empty. Just the bedroom. He'd slept there. Her side of the bed was perfectly neat. She either hadn't slept at all or had risen incredibly early. Achilles returned to the hallway to look for her shoes and coat, and that's when he noticed it. Her gold wedding band set with a diamond was lying on the dresser beside the apartment keys. He snatched up the ring, rolling it between his fingers. A heavy thud started in his chest. What was going on? Zahara, Achilles shouted, panic creeping into his tone. This isn't amusing. Come out now. Only silence answered. He seized his phone from the bedside table, powered it on, and dialed Zahara's number. It rang endlessly, then went to an automated message. The subscriber is unavailable. He tried once more. The same result. And then a third time. Still voicemail. Frantic, Achilles began dialing her old number, the one she kept from before their marriage, which served as her backup. Nothing. His panic intensified. He tore through the condo, desperate to understand what was happening. He threw open the bedroom closet. Her clothes were still there. Dresses hung neatly, shoes in a row, so she couldn't have left Or could she have Achilles wrenched open the top closet shelf where her small, empty suitcase was normally stored? The suitcase was missing, but her wardrobe remained untouched. What had she packed? Achilles bolted to the living room cabinet that held their documents, flung it open, and frantically rifled through the folders. Their marriage certificate was gone. Zahara's passport was gone. The condo paperwork also gone. No, no, no. Achilles hurled the empty folder to the floor, his hands trembling violently. He sprinted into the study. The safe. He needed to check the safe. His fingers shook so badly he fumbled the combination 2 times before finally entering it correctly. Click. The heavy door swung open. It was bare, completely cleaned out. All the cash was gone, the documents gone. Even his father's gold cufflinks, which he kept for sentimental reasons, were also gone. Achilles stared at the open safe, a chill spreading through his veins. This couldn't be real. It was impossible. Zahara never knew the combination. Or had she? He snatched his phone up and dialed his friend and business partner Julian. "Hey, Achilles, how's the head?" Julian's drowsy voice came through. "Julian, did you see Zay leave the party last night?" "Zay, we all left together, man, don't you recall?" "You were out of it. I got you. Both into a taxi around 2 a.m., I believe. She was with us. Obviously. She sat right beside you, completely silent. The entire ride home. You don't remember a thing." Achilles ended the call without another word. So she was here last night. They had returned home together. He passed out. And she... what did she do? Then Achilles raced back to the living room and flipped open his laptop, his fingers drumming impatiently as the machine booted up. It seemed to take an eternity. At last, the screen flickered on. Achilles quickly logged into their online banking, typing in his password. The joint account page loaded. The balance was only $123. Achilles stared at the number in disbelief. Just yesterday, there was over $200,000 in that very account. He'd confirmed the balance right before the party. His trembling worsened. He clicked open the transaction history and then he froze. A transfer of $3,000 at 1:47 a.m., another for $2,000 at 1:52 a.m., then $4,000 at 2:03 a.m., followed by another transfer and another. Dozens of them sent one by one into the bank account of Zahara 5. Smay. The final withdrawal was at 3:15 a.m. Next, a purchase for a business-class plane ticket costing $1,200. Followed by an apartment booking in Milan for $2,200. The air left Achilles' lungs. His mind went completely blank. The numbers and words blurred on the screen before him. She had drained their accounts, taken every last cent, and escaped to Milan. No, he breathed out. No, this can't be happening. He grabbed his phone desperately, calling Zahara's number again. Voicemail, then voicemail. It went straight to voicemail. Achilles dialed the bank. Endless ringing, then a robotic voice listing services. He bellowed into the receiver. "Operator!" he yelled, then endured the hold music. At last a woman's voice answered. "Capital Bank. Hello. How may I assist you?" "My wife took $200,000 from our account." Achilles shrieked. "Return the money now." "Sir, please try to calm down. Can you give me the account number and your security phrase?" He spat out the details, almost gagging on his fury. There was a short pause. The shuffle of papers, the tapping of keys. "Yes, I can see the transactions. Transfers were made to an account opened under the name of Zahara Vern Smay. The transactions are perfectly legal, confirmed by a text code." "Legal? She stole... what? My money." "I do apologize, sir, but it was a joint account. Zahara versus Smay had complete access. She was entitled to perform any transactions. Everything was conducted entirely within the law. I am demanding you reverse the transfers." "Unfortunately, that is simply not possible. The transactions have been finalized. The funds have been credited to the other account. If you wish to make a claim, you'll need to contact the courts. The courts? Achilles could barely breathe. Are you serious? I regret that. We are unable to assist you any further. Have a good day. Click. The line went dead. Achilles hurled the phone onto the sofa. He paced, the room grabbing at his head. Think. What do I do? He snatched the phone up again and began dialing friends. First, he called Marcus, his college friend. Marcus, have you seen Zay? Has she called you by any chance? Zay, no. What is going on? She disappeared. I can't find her anywhere. Disappeared. Did you call the police? No, I don't know what to do. She left. She took the money, the documents. Wait, so she didn't disappear. She just left you. I don't know. Did you see her, yes or no? No. Achilles. I haven't seen her. Listen, maybe you two just had a massive fight and it'll all be fine. Achilles. Slammed the receiver down. He called several others. No one knew a thing. They were all shocked and bewildered. His mother, when he called her, gasped. Zay left Achilles. Did you do something to hurt her feelings? Hurt her feelings, Mom. She stole all our money and ran away. People don't just run away like that, dear. Something must have happened. Try to remember. Did you two argue? No. Everything was perfectly fine. We were at the company party last night. Everything was perfect. All right, son, calm down. Maybe she just needs some space to cool off. Call her in a couple of days. Talk it out. Achilles hung up. Cool off $200,000. And Milan. That is not cooling off. He collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. His head was pounding even worse. The hangover mixed with the shock was turning into an unbearable agony. The phone suddenly rang. Achilles jumped and snatched it up. Maybe it was Zahara. No, it was Julian, his colleague. Hello, Achilles. How are you? Feeling after last night's event? Julian's cheerful voice grated on his raw nerves. Fine. Listen, I wanted to say you were on fire yesterday, especially that toast about the youthful mistake. Everyone was genuinely cracking up. I thought about it later. Zay didn't seem upset, though. She is always so quiet. I almost felt a bit awkward for a second. Achilles froze. The toast. A youthful mistake. He remembered it clearly now. Yes. He had raised his glass and made a joke about Zahara. Everyone laughed. He thought. It was hilarious and witty. And Zahara. What about Zahara? He tried to recall her face at that moment, but all he could remember was the laughter, the applause, and the clinking of glasses. Julian, I'm busy. He snapped and disconnected. The toast. The toast. The prank, a foolish error. The message on the glass, a wrong made right. It all slammed into place. Achilles buried his face in his hands. Heavens, could she have left over that? Over one idiotic joke? No, it was absurd. Everyone had been laughing. It was merely a toast, nothing but words. She couldn't have walked out over that, yet she had. Achilles shot up, stalking through the condo once more. He needed to act now. Locate her. Get her back. Make her understand. She couldn't simply vanish and strip him of everything. He snatched his laptop, quickly pulling up her social media page. Zahara's profile. Her last post was a sunset picture from a week prior. He sent a private message. Zahara, you must call me now. We have to talk. The message was delivered. It would remain unread. He was certain of it. Achilles launched a search engine, typing, "How to find a person who fled the country." A flood of links appeared. Private investigators, legal services. He selected the top result, located their contact number, and placed the call. Sphinx Detective Agency, how may I assist? I have to find someone, my wife. She's gone to Milan, Italy. I understand, sir. You may visit our office to open a file. Our international location services begin at $3,000 with a 50% deposit required. $3,000. Achilles could barely breathe. I don't have that money. She cleaned me out. Then, regrettably, we cannot assist you. Good day. Click. Achilles flung the phone onto the couch, screaming from sheer helplessness. No money. She took every single thing. How was he supposed to find her with no money? He sank to the floor, leaning on the couch. His breath came out in heavy pants. A fire burned in his chest. For the first time ever, Achilles felt completely powerless. His whole world was falling apart. No cash. His wife had fled. She even took the vehicle. Hold on the car. Achilles sprang to his feet, dashing to the hallway. The shelf for the keys was bare. The keys to the SUV had vanished. He sprinted from the condo, leaving the door ajar, and flew down the staircase and burst onto the street, heading for his parking space. His silver sedan, his pride and joy, purchased just last year. It was still there. Achilles dashed to the car and pulled the handle. It was locked. But Zahara possessed the keys and probably the registration documents as well. He sprinted back inside the condo, tearing through cupboards and drawers in a desperate search for the spare key. It was nowhere to be found. He searched for the paperwork. Vanished. Achilles fell back onto the sofa, gazing blankly at the ceiling. So that was it. She had taken it all. The cash, the papers. He was left with absolutely nothing. Then his phone rang once more. It was Julian. Achilles, why did you cut the call? I thought perhaps Zay went to her folks. She does still have her mother. Achilles clung to that hope like a lifeline in a storm. What's her mother's number? I can't seem to recall it. It has to be in your phone. Achilles clumsily scrolled through his contacts and located it. Vivian Lewis, his mother-in-law. He dialed. Several long rings passed. Then an irritated female voice answered. Hello, Vivian Lewis. This is Achilles. Is Zay there? She is not. Why do you ask? What is happening? She's gone somewhere. I don't know where she is. A silence. Then his mother-in-law's tone became frigid. So she left. That's fascinating. Why do you think she might have done that? I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Perhaps she's at your place. No, Achilles. She is not here. And should she arrive, I will inform her of your call. However, I highly doubt she will wish to speak with you. What is that supposed to mean? I mean, my daughter put up with your disrespect for 20 years, and it seems her patience has finally expired. Farewell, Achilles. The line went dead. Disrespect. What disrespect? He'd never been disrespectful. He was a provider. His family had provided her with everything. A home funds a life of ease. Achilles flung his phone against the wall. Its screen spiderwebbed with cracks, yet the device remained stubbornly alive. He slumped to the floor amidst the vacant living room and, for the first time in ages, he felt tears streaming down his face. They weren't born of self-pity, but of rage, profound helplessness, and sheer disbelief. The audacity of her. How could she seize his money, his papers, his very existence, and simply vanish? She had no right, except she did. The account was joint. She had total access. The law was entirely on her side. Achilles got to his feet, walked over to the bar, took out a bottle of whiskey, poured a measure, and downed it in one swift gulp. The fiery liquor scorched its way down his throat, offering a fleeting relief. He poured another, drank it. He needed to think to find an escape, but his mind refused to cooperate. Within him was just a hollow void laced with white-hot rage. Achilles then moved into the bedroom and opened the lowest drawer of the dresser. There, concealed under his t-shirts, rested an old shoebox. He lifted it out and pried it open. Photographs from their youth. Here, the year they met. Zahara in jeans and a sweater with her long hair mid-laugh. He held her in an embrace, both so young, so utterly happy. Then their wedding, small and intimate, Zahara wearing a simple dress, yet so breathtakingly beautiful. He was kissing her, and her eyes held such profound love that even now the photograph made his chest ache. Achilles felt a sharp pang in his heart. The next showed them in their first apartment sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes laughing. Her gaze was fixed on him as if he was the very center of her world. When had that changed? When did he cease to be the axis of her universe? Or had she ceased being important to him? Achilles continued through the pictures, and with every single image, memories came flooding back. How they had dreamed about the future, how they planned to have children. Yes, they had once wanted children, but then he'd said, "Let's wait until I'm established." And later, "This isn't the right time." And finally, he just stopped discussing it entirely. He recalled how Zahara supported him at his career's start, staying awake with him through the long nights as he worked on presentations. She had faith in him when his own had faltered. And in return, what had he ever offered? Her money, a home, a vehicle, trips to foreign countries, but what about love, respect, or his attention? When was the last time? He even considered her feelings, her thoughts, or her own personal dreams. Achilles recalled her suggestion to visit the mountains. Just 6 months prior, he had declined. His project took priority. He then remembered her desire to return to her career. A year ago, he had ridiculed her ambition. His own success mattered more. He recalled her preparing all of his favorite dishes, welcoming him with a warm smile, never once arguing, constantly supporting him. And he had called her a mistake. Before everyone, in public, just to get a laugh. Achilles closed the shoebox, slid it back into the drawer, stood up, and then walked to the window. Outside, it was a typical Saturday. People were living their lives while his had just shattered into countless pieces. He understood that she hadn't made the mistake. The mistake was his. He had erred when he first started taking her completely for granted, when he ceased to value her, when he assumed she would never leave because her life was comfortable, because it was convenient, because he thought she had nowhere else to go. But she did leave, and she took more than just money. She took 20 years of his life with her and proved he'd been an empty shell this entire time. Achilles slowly sat down on the windowsill, gazing out the window. For the first time in ages, a profound loneliness washed over him. And for the first time, he questioned if he could ever reclaim what he had lost. But how can you win back someone who offered you 20 years only to get scorn in return? Zahara stood at the window of her Milan flat, a warm mug of cappuccino in her hands. The pane framed a picturesque view of the tight, ancient city streets and their terracotta roofs. Far off, the iconic spires of the Duomo were just visible. The early morning sun flooded the room with its warm glow, and for the first time in so long, Zahara felt she could finally breathe freely. A full week had gone by since she had arrived. The initial days were spent just wandering the city, drifting aimlessly through its many streets, pausing in little cafes, resting on park benches, and observing the people go by. She required time to truly absorb the fact that this was no dream. She had actually escaped. She was truly here, thousands of miles away from her former life. Her phone had been ringing incessantly all week. Akeley was persistent, calling from various numbers. She refused to answer, simply blocking each one as it came through. Then came the messages, texts, and app alerts, all of which she pointedly ignored. She only saw the previews. "Zahara, call me. We must talk. You had no right. Give back the money now." She proceeded to delete all the messaging applications, retaining only her email in case something genuinely important arose. But Achille had not contacted her there yet. Zahara took a sip of her coffee, savoring the dense foam. The cappuccino in this place was unlike the cafe style she knew back home. It was stronger, richer, with a delicate bitterness. Yesterday, she stopped by a small cafe on the corner of her street. The air inside carried the scent of fresh baking. A woman in her 50s, solidly built with gray hair in a loose bun and warm brown eyes, was standing behind the counter. "Buongiorno," she welcomed Zahara with a broad smile. "Buongiorno, Zahara," responded with some uncertainty. Cappuccino, per favore. It was nearly all the Italian she knew. The woman just nodded and began to prepare the coffee. Zahara took a seat at a table near the window. A moment later, a mug with flawless foam and a croissant upon a small plate was placed before her. "I did not order a croissant," Zahara stated in English. The woman simply waved her hand dismissively. "A gift. You are new to the neighborhood." "Yes, I have seen you walking past for several days." Zahara nodded, a little surprised. The woman then pulled a chair over to her table. The cafe was otherwise empty. "My name is Julia. This place is my cafe. I have been right here for 20 years. I'm Zahara. I only just arrived." "On holiday?" Zahara hesitated, then shook her head. "No, starting a new life." Julia observed her intently, and a flicker of recognition passed through her eyes. "Ah, capisco, I understand. I also started over once. 20 years ago I fled from my husband. He drank. He was cruel. He treated me as his possession. I took my young daughter and left Sicily to come here, to Milan, with no money, no employment, only one suitcase." Zahara froze, her mug held mid-air. "And how did you possibly manage?" "In many ways. At first I was a waitress, after that, a dishwasher. Then I saved up, and I learned how to cook. 5 years on, I opened this very cafe. It is small, but it's mine. My daughter is grown. She has her own family now, living down in Rome, and I am here content." Julia smiled. "Do you know what the most difficult part was?" "What was it?" "Believing that I even had the right to be happy. For years my husband hammered it into my head that I was completely worthless, that I would fall to pieces without him, and I very nearly believed him. But then I came to realize it's far better to fall to pieces than to remain with a person who doesn't see your worth." A knot formed in Zahara's throat. This stranger had somehow read her entire story in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered softly. "For what, dear?" "For telling me I needed to hear that." Julia gently squeezed her hand. "Come back. You're welcome here as you find your feet. Should you need anything, just ask. We women must support one another." After that day, Zahara started visiting Julia's cafe each morning. They would talk. Julia shared stories about Milan life and began teaching Zahara Italian phrases, offered her tips on places to see, where to find affordable groceries, and the top local language courses. Now, just 1 week after arriving, Zahara gazed from her apartment window, sensing her life was starting to mend itself. She had signed up for an intensive Italian course with 3 hours of lessons daily. Her class was filled with other foreigners, a man from Brazil, a youthful woman from Japan, and an older couple from Germany. Each of them had arrived for their own reasons. They were all embarking on new lives, so nobody asked intrusive questions. In the course of their 3rd lesson, the instructor, a young Italian man named Luca, inquired about their professions. "I am a programmer," said the man from Brazil. "I'm a student of art," the Japanese woman shared. When her turn came, Zahara paused for a moment. "I am an interior designer." The words felt unsure, as she hadn't worked in that field for 2 decades, but Luca just nodded. "Bene, Milan has plenty of work for designers." After the lesson, the Japanese woman, a small woman in her late 20s with short dark hair, came up to Zahara. "Hello, I'm Yuki." "Hi," Zahara responded. "Are you truly a designer?" "I was," Zahara confessed. "It has been a very long time since I've worked." "Do you hope to return to it?" Zahara considered. Did she? 2 decades ago. It had been her passion. But that dream was extinguished, smothered by home life, Achilles' ambition, and her own surrender. "I'm not sure," she replied truthfully. "Perhaps. I know a woman who works in a small design studio. They need an assistant. Perhaps you should apply." Zahara's first impulse was to decline. She wasn't prepared. It had been too long. Who could possibly hire her? But then Julia's advice echoed in her mind. "Believing you deserve happiness is the most difficult step." All right, she agreed. Thank you. Please give me the contact. Yuki jotted down the number and the address of the studio. Back home, Zahara gazed at the card for a long while before she finally dialed the number. A woman, with a warm voice, answered, introducing herself as Alessandre. Yes, we are looking for an assistant. You can come for an interview tomorrow. My Italian is not very good, Zahara cautioned her. That's no problem. We also speak English, as well. Be here at 2. Zahara showed up the following day exactly at 2 o'clock. The studio was located in an old building that had high ceilings and enormous windows. Inside, the air smelled of paint and fresh wood. Sketches of interiors adorned the walls. In a corner were samples of fabric tile and wallpaper. Alessandre was an energetic woman in her 40s with a chic short haircut and vivid lipstick. So, tell me about yourself, she asked, gesturing for Zahara to sit. Zahara offered a concise version, leaving out the details. Her degree, some work experience 2 decades ago. Then a long pause. Why the pause? Alessandre inquired. Family, Zahara replied simply, but I am ready to come back now. Alessandre nodded her head, not pressing for more details. She then produced a folder with some sketches. Look at this. A client needs her bedroom updated. What's your suggestion? Zahara took the sketches and examined them. The room was notably small. Its windows faced north, allowing little light. She pondered this, and ideas suddenly began to flood her mind, as if a dormant skill had awakened after years of disuse. I would use light tones, she started softly. White beige with perhaps some soft pastel accents, a large mirror across from the window to reflect light. Minimal furniture. To avoid cluttering the space. Natural textiles such as linen and cotton, and certainly living plants. They bring such life to a room. Alessandre listened, nodding. Good. And if the client prefers dark colors? Then we could create one accent wall. A deep sapphire blue or emerald green, for instance, but keep the rest light, or the room will feel oppressive. Plus plenty of fixtures, wall sconces, floor lamps, perhaps even LED strip lighting. Alessandre smiled. You said you haven't worked in a long time, but it doesn't show. You have an excellent sense of space. When can you start? Zahara blinked. You're hiring me. Of course. We are a small studio. The pay isn't high, but the projects are compelling. Does that work for you? Yes, Zahara breathed out. Yes, of course. She left the studio with a curious lightness in her chest. A job. She actually had a job again. Her own earned, apart from Achille, his money and his approval. Her first workday began 3 days later. Zahara arrived at 9 in the morning, and Alessandre immediately immersed her in the studio's work, showing her the current projects, explaining tasks, and introducing the colleagues. There were only 3 of them: Alessandre, herself, a young man, Marco, who handled 3-dimensional rendering, and now Zahara. The job proved to be precisely what she had once dreamed of. They consulted with clients, discussed their desires, created sketches, and chose materials. Zahara had forgotten the feeling of being useful, needed of seeing the fruits of her labor. Her initial project was a small one, designing a flat for a woman recently divorced who wanted to completely remake her home. I want absolutely nothing to remind me of the past, the client stated at their meeting. I want everything to be fresh, brand new, and mine. Zahara understood her perfectly. She devised a design using light tones with brilliant accents, vibrant yellow cushions, bright turquoise curtains, and fresh flowers. When the remodel was finished and the client saw it, she began to weep. This is exactly what I needed, she said, embracing Zahara. Thank you. You didn't just make a beautiful interior space, you helped me feel like I could truly start over. Zahara returned home that evening, sensing her life had finally found its meaning. The days soon blended into weeks. Zahara worked, studied her Italian, and strolled through Milan in the evenings. She discovered The city's small squares where musicians would gather, its antique shops with amazing finds, and the parks where she could just sit with a book. One Saturday, she was in Parco Sempione reading an Italian book slowly and with a dictionary at hand, but she was reading it nonetheless. A man in his 50s with glasses, graying hair, and a pleasant face sat down nearby. He took out his own book and got comfortable on the bench. After a moment, he noticed her book and smiled. "Dante, you are reading Dante. How brave." Zahara blushed. "I'm trying to. It's not going very well yet." "Don't you worry. Dante is difficult even for Italians. Are you new in Milan?" "For 6 months now." They began to talk. The man said his name was Marco. He was an art history professor at a local university. He would tell her about Milan, its rich past, and the city's secret treasures that most tourists overlooked. "Did you know there's a hidden vineyard in Milan right in the city's heart?" he explained. "And the Paul Patoli House Museum. It holds a stunning art collection, yet it's almost always deserted, unlike this Brera Gallery." Zahara listened with a smile. Marco was a cultured and fascinating person to talk to. There was no pressure, no attempt to impress, just him sharing his passions. They arranged to meet again, simply to walk and see the city. Zahara didn't see it as romance, just a pleasant acquaintance, a friendship. That was all she needed. But Akali relentlessly tried to contact her. 6 months after her departure, an email landed in her inbox. Zahara stared at it for a long time, then, at last, she opened it. "Zahara, I now see how wrong I was. Please forgive me. I never appreciated you. I behaved like a fool. But I want to make everything right. Please come back. We can begin again. I will change. I swear it. I need you. Without you, I've seen how lonely I was for all those years. Give me one chance, Achille." Zahara read the message 2 times, then closed it. She sat by the window gazing out at the Milanese evening. Once those words would have meant the world. Once she would have held on to them like a lifeline. She would have believed he could truly change and would have returned. But now she knew. People do not change. Akali had only lost a convenient life, his own comfort, and his money. He didn't miss her. He missed the stability, the home, the unwavering support she always gave him. Zahara opened a reply and wrote concisely, "Akali, you called me a youthful mistake, and I agree. The mistake was enduring your disrespect for 20 years. The mistake was giving up on my own self for you. The mistake was believing love meant one person gives while the other just takes. Thank you for this lesson. I have finally learned it. Do not write to me again. Live your life. I will now live mine." Zahara pressed send and felt the final burden lift from her soul. Another 3 months went by. Zahara had found the rhythm of her new existence. A job that brought her joy, a language she was beginning to master, and friends. Julia from the cafe, Yuki from her courses, Alessandre and Marco from the studio, and Professor Marco, with whom she spent her weekends walking, visiting museums, sipping wine in little trattorias, and talking about everything imaginable. One evening they were sitting at a cafe in a piazza. Autumn had arrived. The air was crisp and the leaves rustled underfoot. Marco spoke of his work and his students, then suddenly asked, "Zahara, can I ask you something? Personal." "Yes, of course." "Are you happy?" She paused. Was she happy? She no longer had a husband or her former life or the stability she knew for 20 years, but she had work she adored. She had friends. She had the freedom to choose how she would live, what to pursue, who to talk to. "Yes," she answered. "I'm happy for the first time in many years." Marco smiled. "It shows. When we first met, you were like a closed book. Now you have blossomed." Zahara finished her cappuccino and looked out at the piazza. People were strolling, laughing, and living out their lives. And she was a part of this life. Not as Achilles' shadow, nor the wife of a successful entrepreneur, nor as a youthful Mistake. Just Zahara, the designer who built homes for people. A woman who started her life anew and had no regrets. For a moment, her phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Zahara stared at it, debating whether to answer. Without hesitation, she hit decline and then blocked the contact. The past was behind her. Her future was right here in this city, in the life she was building for herself. You know, Marco, she began, returning to their talk, I've come to realize something profound. Self-respect is worth far more than any comfort. It's never too late to begin truly living, and, most crucially, you cannot allow others to define your worth. You must recognize your own value. Marco nodded. Those are wise words, and you are the living proof that they are true. They lingered for a while, finishing their coffee before setting out for a walk through the Milanese evening. Strolling beside Marco, Zahara for the first time in ages felt entirely whole, a self-sufficient individual, not merely a component of someone else's life. Somewhere out there, Achilles was likely still struggling to comprehend what had occurred, still furious, wounded, and perhaps even in pain. But that was no longer her burden to carry. Her challenge was learning how to live again, to savor the small joys, to cherish those around her, and to construct a future without glancing back at her past. And she was succeeding. Zahara paused on a bridge, gazing at the reflections of city lights dancing on the water. Marco stood beside her quietly, taking in the scenery. The Milanese evening was breathtaking. Thank you, Achilles, Zahara thought to herself, for showing me who I never want to become, for forcing me toward change, for calling me a mistake. Because it was in that very moment I understood the only mistake I'd made for years was betraying myself. I will not make that mistake again. Never again. A gentle breeze stirred her hair. Faint music drifted from a distance as the city hummed with its evening life. And Zahara smiled, gazing toward the horizon, because that future at long last belonged entirely to her. Did you enjoy this story? And what city are you watching from tonight? Let's connect in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, which helps me create more stories just like this one. Thank you dearly for your wonderful support. I'm so looking forward to reading your comments on the story. On your screen now are 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There are so many more to discover on my channel. Please don't forget to subscribe. I will see you in the next life story with love and respect.